Welcome to my garage, welcome to the channel, and welcome to part 3 of our Dune Buggy EFI Mirage engine swap. So I'm dealing with a few unique problems with this engine in particular, and I would say probably the main thing is figuring out how I'm going to wire the ECU to this engine, what sensors I'm going to leave in place, or what exactly is going to happen if I just simply do not connect the sensors that this computer and ECU is used to having in the vehicle. And will it run? Number one, will I have proper ignition and spark and fuel? And then also figuring out, the fuel systems. Am I going to be using fuel pump out of the Mirage, or will I be able to integrate some kind of third-party fuel system? So there's a lot to be worked out with this, which is why it's taking a little bit longer for me to produce these parts to the video. So the timeline, as you guys are watching it, is going to slow down a little bit. Really, I'm spending just as much time on the project. It's just going to take me a lot more time to acquire the information, to put together and organize that information, to film and then actually produce and edit the videos for you guys. But don't be discouraged, we're still moving at full speed through the project. There's just a lot more to be done at this stage of the game. So I started to get some additional parts in, which I'll show you guys here in a minute. And one of the things I realized until after I had edited and uploaded the last part of the video was I didn't show you guys all of the finished engine mounts. So let me do that first. So this is the engine mount that's on the back side of the engine where the oil filter is. And at this point I have cut this down, I've trimmed it where I need it to be, I've welded it up, and I've painted it. So that one's ready to roll. And let me show you the finished mount for this side of the engine. This is the one that I pretty much left in its stock form, but I just turned it around to face a different direction. I did hang this bracket here just to give this some additional support, welded that up. I've got my holes cut in the top. Really, this one required the least amount of work by far of any of the engine mounts, and I just added some additional welds to the sides and back of it, back here and so forth. I just didn't really trust those Chinese welds to hold. And then I painted that one. And then our third engine mount back here, this is the one I think I completely neglected to show you guys in the last part. So this is the one that sits on the front side, or I guess the back side of the engine. And all I did was I split this mount right down the middle. So I just cut it down the middle, I trimmed off what I needed, and then I re-welded it back together. And you can see one section comes out a little bit further, and that is going to bolt. And the one side that sticks out is going to bolt on here, and the other side is going to bolt up over here. So that one's ready to roll. All right, so let me keep showing you guys the goodies here. I've got a ECU for this Mirage engine. This ECU, I was not aware, but this actually came out of an automatic, a 2015 automatic. I thought that I had ordered the manual, but I think I goofed on the listings and I ordered the wrong one. I was looking at two, and so I think I pulled the trigger on the wrong one. So whether or not this ECU is going to work for this engine remains to be seen. So I ordered a clutch, just got our clutch in. This clutch is from Southeast Clutch. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it's so small, it looks like some kind of like it could go on a large model, like an RC model or something. Look at this tiny little clutch plate. I mean, this whole clutch plate is the size of my hand. But then finally today, off of the manual 15 that I found at the salvage yard, they did have the actual manual axles off of that 15 Mirage. And they're in fairly good condition. They look to be low mileage. The boots are still on them. This is the larger of the two, of course, and they do fit. So that's been a beast for me, just trying to find axles that will work for this, because for some reason there are no aftermarket parts available, and there are very, very little limited parts available for used parts really anywhere, and I'm having to travel a long ways to find these parts. So that's a big victory. I've wasted about at least 2 weeks with other axles that don't work, this other axle, and now finally I've got the axles that I need, so I can start moving forward with this project. But of course, I'm not going to need to be running an AC compressor on this, so I've got to try to figure out the right size belt. So this is one of the many areas with this build that's been really tricky. All I'm going to do for this belt is I'm just going to take the strap here and I'm just going to measure, take an idea here of what this belt measurement would be without running an AC compressor. Okay, so I've got it marked pretty good with my thumb. I'll measure this. So we're looking at 35 to 35 and a half. Okay, so we know that it's between 35 and 35 and a half inches in length. And then if you ever don't know what the appropriate belt is, you can just count the grooves. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This has 6 grooves. So the belt for this application is, I'm going to go with the lower end because this thing will have some stretch to it. So I'm going to look for a belt that's between 35 and 35 and a quarter inches, 6 ribs on it. So that's the belt I need to order, and at least we'll get that rolling. Alright, so I want to show you guys one of the things here that have been holding me up for quite some time, which is actually the engine flywheel bolts. These are a specialty size. I have tried, so far today, just today, I have been to 2 different hardware stores. I have been to 2 different dealerships, and I have been to 2 specialty bolt supply stores, and none of them have the bolts that are the size to fit this. What I've seen today in the many different threads, I'm estimating that this is probably going to be a 7/16 by 24 thread. Because this is a 20 and it's just not fine enough to fit in there. It'll start to thread in and then it stops. So 24, 26 threads, something like that every inch is probably what that is, but it's definitely a 7/16. So what I finally had to do is I finally had to just specialty order the part from the Mitsubishi dealer, because the 2 different dealers that I spoke to, neither of them had this part in stock, and of course it's costing me a small fortune just for a couple of engine flywheel bolts. That's one thing that's been preventing me from getting the clutch put together. So there's a very limited range where you can actually access parts to this engine or even to these Mirages, and for any of you that have a Mirage, you probably already know that, because I'm sure it's been a nightmare for you to service yourself. So you've basically got to do everything through the dealership. What's interesting also is if you were to order this axle directly through Mitsubishi or any of the official parts dealerships, I think this axle is a $750 axle. And there's absolutely nothing special about this whatsoever. There's no magic fairy dust. It doesn't cook you breakfast in the morning. There's nothing that would cause this axle to be $750 worth of steel. It makes no sense. So anyway, some really interesting challenges that I'm finding with these Mitsubishis. But nonetheless, we're moving forward with the project and things are slowly moving along. It's been a nightmare trying to source parts for this so far. But anyway, you guys can learn from my mistakes, and that's why I'm kind of jumping into this project in the first place, is so that way any of you who are wanting to do something similar, well, now I've already gone through, I've got my lumps and bruises, and I can tell you exactly what needs to be done in order to make these kind of swaps. So with my engine hoist out here, I'm going to jack this up to full extension. We've got full extension happening there. I'm going to try to get these axles into place. Come on. Yes. This is like Wow, this is like nuts. Can you guys see how close this is? Check this out. Look at how close this fits. Now this is at full compression, so this actually will extend quite a bit more. So I think literally this axle is perfect in terms of length. Okay, so now we've got both of our score marks here. Nothing special, just a straight line. That's really all I needed. We got this one here, and we have this one there. And the plan here is on both of these. These will be cut like there and welded onto the tops there. So we've got our cuts here. These came out pretty good. So this will get welded on here like that. I've decided I'm going to just go ahead and weld this. I'm going to eyeball it, get it as close to centered as possible, and I am going to hope that my cuts came out straight. And I'm going to trust that even though there are tiny little non-flat spots on this, that overall this is going to be flush and flat enough. Want to clean these up a bit. Alright, so now that these have had a chance to cool, let me show you the finished product. I'm really bummed out that they actually, I think when they were pulling these off the vehicle that they got these from, they damaged these little outer cups here that hold it together. But I just went around this, of course, with the MIG and just got this as straight as I could. And is it focusing? Okay, so you can see the weld that I just put around this. What I also did, and I don't know if you can see in here, but there's a couple of spots back in there where I just did 3 little sides. Don't blame this terrible looking weld here. This was not me. This was on the original buggy, so I figure, and there's no weld whatsoever on the inside, so just this one terrible bead on the outside here has held this thing together as long as it has. Then that means that hopefully my weld will hold together. So that's one side. This one's a little bit worse. For some reason I was having some trouble with some splatter on the second one, so it's not quite as pretty, but it should do the job. I'll show you the bigger one first. Now this is the one that actually belongs on this side. And you can see it's pretty straight. There's not a whole lot of run out to this. There's just ever so slightly, if I just kind of hold my finger there, you can see there's an ever so slight, maybe a 1/2 millimeter run out to this. And then we've got the other side. This one has Just a tiny bit more wobble to it, but I don't think it's enough to create a problem. This one probably has, well, I guess about the same. 1/2 to 1 millimeter of run out on this one. But again, really not too bad. So hopefully that will do the trick for the axles. Look what I got. Rust-Oleum. That Krylon stuff, forget it. And yes, this is a flat black. Okay, so I've got my axle parts cleaned, drying. I soaked them in some super clean to get all the grease out of the old axles. And now I'm just drying everything off, and then we'll start to assemble these axles. What's up, guys? Sorry for the background noise. My neighbors are using this extremely hot, humid day to get out there and mow their lawns in the middle of the afternoon. Personally, I like to do it in the morning, but whatever. This is probably day 6 or 7 that I've pretty much exclusively been either working on the axles or waiting for specific parts to come in. I realize this has been a slow process, and but we're finally making progress, okay? So it's the next day after I got finished putting the axles together, and I mock fit them into the buggy to show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so let me show you guys the finished product. Engine is installed. Axles are both installed. I've got clearance. The only thing I don't have here in terms of clearance is on this inside axle, the little part of the clamp that pinches together is maybe 1 millimeter, maybe 2 millimeters, and that's too thick to actually rotate the axle. When I spin the diff, it actually gets snagged because of the thickness of the strap is going across that section. Full extension. This one's got about 1/8 of an inch wiggle, and full extension, this one's got about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of wiggle. So that will do it. You know, I ran into a lot of challenges with trying to finish up this part, so this one was a long time coming. So I appreciate your guys' patience through the process. It's been so many weeks of me trying to get these axles into place, parts ordered, and finish up this part of the video. And hopefully part 4 will be coming a lot quicker than it did for part 3 to happen. So I certainly appreciate you guys watching Dirt Gear TV, and we'll see you in the next episode.